Jason Miyares maintaining a slight lead over Democratic incumbent Mark Herring. Minneapolis voters have reelected Mayor Jacob Frey after a bitter race that focused on calls for changes to policing.
17 candidates ran for mayor in Minneapolis, including many who took issue with the way incumbent Democrat Jacob Frey handled changes to the police department since one of its officers killed George Floyd last year. Election night results put Frey with about 43% of the overall vote, and he collected enough additional votes as voters' second or third choice under the ranked choice system for election officials to announce him the winner. The mayor positioned himself as an opponent of an amendment to replace the police department with a new public safety unit. Voters defeated that proposal with about 56% opposed. Analysts say the passage of a separate amendment strengthening the mayor's powers means failure to reform policing will fall squarely on Frey's shoulders next election cycle. I'm Jennifer King.
On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average up by 105 points. The Nasdaq Composite Index rose by 161 points, with the S&P 500 advancing by 30 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Thinking about a deck carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
When you're hungry for tender brisket or some delicious homemade cobbler, then look no further than Leach Brothers Barbecue, located at 1106 East Henderson in Cleveland, Texas. Leach Brothers has been family-owned and operated since 1950. Take it from me, Taco Joe Orwinski. Todd and his family have been filling my belly breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Heck, I even have my own booth, open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Come see them for dine-in, carry-out, and all your catering needs.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome to this evening's episode of Reach Across Johnson County. My name is Shari Phillips. I am one of the hosts this evening. And Tiffany here. We got Nikki. Will be joining us in just a moment. Tonight, our topic for this evening is Delta 8 and vaping. And we have a very special guest that's going to be joining us. It's Dr. Doug Henry. Hi, Doctor. How are you? Okay, my volume's low.
I'm gonna go ahead and give me. Might need to turn your mic up just a little bit.
Off these headphones and just do that.
Oh, there you go.
All right, hi. That's what we'll do. I thought I'd use headphones. Now I will throw them away.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna do a little introduction deal that I have here. So, Dr. Henry is a medical anthropologist and associate professor of anthropology at the University of North Texas. He has a broad interest in public health, but specializes in looking at the interaction of cultural, I can't even talk this evening, health and society. So he studies behaviors, beliefs, risk-taking, and decision-making. Some past studies have involved sleep disorders, paramedics and paramedical decision-making, childhood asthma, and college-age vaping. The vaping study is how he got interested in the Delta 8, and as it's such a new product, and vaping seems to be one of the most popular ways of taking it. So, welcome to the Reach Across Johnson County segment on JoCo Community Radio. You can join us live here on Facebook or download the TuneIn Radio app. It's free. We are live 365 on JoCo Community Radio, the voice of Johnson County, Texas. And to share a little bit of information about Reach, which I know we'll get here in just a little bit, but Reach's mission is to support safe and healthy choices vital to the well-being of our youth, families, and community. This show will guide you, educate you, and inspire you to be a part of the solution and to reach out and make a difference in our communities. What began as a local movement in the city of Midlothian grew to include programs throughout Ellis County with only a few years and eventually expanded into neighboring Johnson County. And here we are today.
Great job.
Thank you. I'm getting better at it.
You're doing great at it. I'm Tiffany Carlin. I am the engineer. I don't know. I'm here. I talk most of the time.
Well, we appreciate
sometimes
you
too
so very
much.
Never. Okay. And we've got Nikki that's going to be joining us here in just a second. So again, thank you, Dr. Henry, for joining us this evening. And one of the first things I kind of wanted to ask is if you could share a little bit more about your background and what led you into the vaping study you did.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. And I wanted to say thanks for having me. It's a real honor for me to not be able to just talk to my teenage kids about this or family. And so, yeah, thanks. So let's think. If I'm really honest with myself, it actually does go back to my kids, though. It was about 2019. And so I'm a medical anthropologist. I teach in a department of applied anthropology, which just means we try to be practical and useful about what we do in our research. In other words, I'm not just writing things that 5 people will read for, other anthropologists will read, right? And so let's think. So it was about 2019, and my oldest daughter had just turned into a teenager. And about that time, there was a 15-year-old in Dallas who died of EVALI. Do you all remember when kids who were vaping were getting real sick and nobody could figure out, at least at first, what was going on? Well, it turned out that they had been vaping vitamin E acetate as part of an added thing bought on the black market. And that just got me really interested in, what was this all about and how was I going to talk to my kids about it? How was I going to try to get my kids to make, educated risks and educated decisions about what they were going to do? So I think that's how I got into it. So in 2020, I was teaching a public health class, and oftentimes we have our classes do class projects where, as part of the curriculum, you're not just reading things, we're all doing a project. Right. So I was working with the Denton County Public Health Department. We were talking about, what would be a good study, what would be something to do. And we really hit on vaping as sort of a potential public health crisis that we really needed to sort of research more. And this was at the end of 2019, just pre-COVID. Right. So you see maybe how poorly we chose because we didn't choose, infectious diseases. We chose vaping.
Well, yeah, that was, I guess, really before the COVID, because I remember in the 2019, our schools were reaching out to agencies like ours to find out, what is all this going on with all the vaping? Because it just really blew up. And then I guess it was in August that we started hearing about the epidemic and that these kids were, ending up in the hospital and things like that. So that was actually a really crazy time. And then, of course, when COVID hit, then we didn't hear anything, but we know it's still going on.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. So it ended up being about, I think it was 2,800 people went to the hospital in 2019 and even into early 2020. And 68 was the number. That was the latest number I saw, people who passed away from it.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big concern, right?
Yes.
And so our study was really based on, what are the risks that people are taking? What do they get out of vaping? And it was really vaping anything. I don't know if you all know this or not, but you can vape nicotine, but you can also vape caffeine. You can
Right.
vape melatonin. You can vape,
Really?
oh
I didn't
gosh,
know
yeah, vitamin B for energy. So there's lots of different products, right, that you can vape. Oh, and you can vape, of course, THC, which
Yeah.
is what gets you high, right? So we were just interested in this, right? Like, well, what are people getting out of it? Why are they doing it? Particularly THC was kind of interesting because, people at this time knew about vitamin E acetate at the time of the study, knew about the risks of buying stuff on the black market, but they were choosing to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so we were just interested in this. Like, does this mean that people are stupid? Are they just making really bad decisions? Or in fact, are people doing some kind of cost benefit in their head, trying to think about, okay, well, I know that there is this risk, but look, I get X, Y, and Z out of doing it. And so therefore that risk is worth it to me. So
Right.
anyway.
Did you happen to find that, I mean, were these people that were coming from smoking regular cigarettes and go into the vaping, or are these people that primarily never even smoked and just picked up, vaping?
It's about half and half, Sherry.
Okay.
Yeah, really about half and half. There were some who hated the smell of cigarettes and would say, I would never smoke. That is disgusting. I can't stand the way that smells. But then they did like vaping, and at the time you could still get vaping flavors, right? Of
Right.
either menthol or pineapple express kind of stuff.
Yes.
Um,
Mango, all those
Bubble
fruity.
gum.
right. And so that was some, and then the other half were, we did have a lot of people who had been heavy smokers before and who switched to vaping as a way of quitting smoking. And, for them, vaping was a huge success. I mean, they felt so much better about themselves. They weren't hacking up a lung every time they woke up in the morning, right?
Right.
So
I
we
will
really
say
had
my
both.
son is one of those too. He was a traditional cigarette smoker, and then he vapes, but he recently had a child and everything, so he's not smoking the traditional cigarettes anymore, but he is still vaping. So my fingers are crossed that he'll be able
Yeah.
to give it up
Well,
eventually.
and there were good studies. I mean, there are good studies, particularly out of the UK, that look at vaping as an alternative product to cigarettes and point out, look, you can't even compare. Cigarettes are so bad for you compared to vaping. So they will even cite something like, vaping was 90% or 92% better than smoking cigarettes. And of course, that exact number has been sort of played with a little bit and even made fun, mocked a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's no question that vaping seems to be better. The problem, of course, was with vaping THC and then the black market that created, right?
Right.
Where you had kids, making vape juice in their bathtubs and then, adding stuff to it. And yeah.
Man, when I smoked years ago, there was desperation for nicotine at times. I mean, but never did I ever think of trying to grow my own tobacco plants. So
Seriously, I think the worst that I might have done was find like a parent's ashtray.
Oh yeah, I dig through. Oh, I was just gonna say that. Dig through the ashtray in the car. He dug through but the limits. Like, well, I could just start growing my own tobacco.
Our brain didn't think like
for backup. But these kids are just, I mean, they're diving in to do things like this at home. Let's make our own vape juice. I mean,
oh my gosh,
it's chemical versus growing a pot plant.
Do you think the internet has anything to do with that because they have those resources of those ideas?
Yeah, actually that does come up a part of it. It actually, I've seen it more with Delta 8, which is sort of where I am at now. But with Delta 8, you really do have, YouTube sites where I jokingly call them the bro chemists. So guys who will talk about, hey, it's so easy to make Delta 8 yourself, and here's how you do it. With the vaping, that we didn't encounter anybody who made their own vape juice. Sometimes people would build their own box mods or their own vaping devices. But then again, it was if you wanted THC, you would buy it on the black market. And sometimes that involved, knowing someone who would drive to Colorado then, and, having a relationship with this person that then became your dealer, and then sort of trusting this dealer to then bring you back legitimate product. But then
Right.
other times it was, well, I bought this and you didn't really know where it came from, but yeah, that's what you bought. And that was really the danger, right, of the black market. If you didn't know the dealer or didn't have a personal relationship with the dealer, then you were taking definite risks.
I know that's so scary. The whole thing is scary to me. I know that, in just in the work that we do, we just came off of our Red Ribbon Week and doing presentations, and that was what a lot of the schools were actually asking for, was us to, to talk about, the vaping and the dangers involved. And, we look back at how many years it took us, to get where we are regarding tobacco, and kids know that tobacco is dangerous and it's not good for you.
Mhm.
But, now we're talking to the kids, because, it's advertised on, the TV and stuff, that this is a safer alternative to smoking, and, that it's not bad for you. But we're finding out, now that it is bad for you, that things
Right,
are happening.
right, right. Yeah,
So,
it's one of those products that, technology gives us something new, and I think we just don't know the risks yet. And
right.
frankly, I think there's going to be so much technological turnover. I think we're always going to be in this sort of game of catch up and
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's acceptable or not.
Well, and the thing that gets me too is, I mean, how many different devices there are, and with the kids that are on campus, the campuses are tobacco free or vape free now. We had signage and stuff that were put up for vape free, but these kids are so clever at the devices that they're
And the
using.
and the devices are lower in price than they were as
Mm.
Yeah,
well. I mean, they're
And
more
they're
ex
tiny. You can just fit them in your pocket.
yeah, and that, I mean, we actually do a presentation for, it's called Hidden in Plain Sight, and we actually have a lot of these devices that we show parents, because a lot of these parents have never even seen it. And the thing of it is a lot of our school teachers and stuff haven't, and they have the vape pen that's in the hoodie jackets, because a lot of kids wear hoodies to school because
Oh,
it's
all of
cold.
them. I mean, even in the summer.
Yeah, and they're talking about, I mean, they're able to vape. I mean, it looks like you're chewing on the string of your hoodie, when in fact you're vaping, and then blowing the vapor off
Into your hoodie,
into your hoodie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's
this
exactly
happened.
right.
So, I mean, that's so
which another
scary.
thing when we were growing up that you couldn't have a cigarette that was coming out of your hoodie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You
these
couldn't hide that stuff in school.
couldn't hide it.
Well, I'm aging myself a little bit, but when I was in high school, which, I graduated in the early 80s, we actually, when I was a freshman, on campus, we actually had a vending machine that sold cigarettes. They wouldn't allow us to
Wow.
have sodas.
Wow.
We had a vending machine that had cigarettes, and there was a smoking
Really?
patio at our high
You know
school.
what I do remember, and
We
I
have
graduated in the late 90s, but I remember, I guess, maybe being young enough to the
To
smoking
remember the
section
section.
at the high school
Yeah.
where you could drive by and see everyone
Oh,
out there
yeah.
smoking.
we also had that. Yeah, the breezeway. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we called it.
Yeah, exactly. That's they didn't call it the breezeway, they called it the smoky patio at our school. But I thought that was, even back then, I thought that was weird that they wouldn't let us have caffeine on campus, but they allowed
That is
cigarettes.
wild.
Yeah.
So, and the things that these kids are dealt with, in our understanding, as the vaping is starting at such. I mean, we've got middle schoolers that are vaping.
Sure, sure, sure. So that was something we were interested in was, everybody knows it's risky, but they seem to be doing it anyway. So we were looking at, well, what are you getting out of it? Like, why are you doing it? And for the vaping, what was really surprising was how many people were actually doing it for medical reasons. Maybe
Okay.
not medical, biological medical, but medical in terms of just mental health and
Right.
de-stress. They would talk about how they had a stressful job, and so they would sort of take a minute out of their day for themselves, and that's what vaping was for them. It was sort of
Mm.
just sort of like me time, where
Right.
they could just sort of relax and process what was going on. And I guess it is kind of sensual, maybe the word, where you're sort of inhaling something and you're breathing out a smoke kind of vapor. It's
Mhm.
vapor, not smoke, but there's something about that. It's sort of this elemental kind of aspect that a lot of people really liked, that was appealing. So that was surprising for me, but that was one of our findings, was that people were actually doing it for medical kinds of reasons, right?
Right.
I dressed up as a Roaring 20s flapper girl the other day, woman, whatever you want to say, for Halloween. And so, and with it came, like the fake long,
cigarette deal.
exotic cigarette holder thing. And I mean, I haven't smoked in 20 years. So to have something like that in your hand, it meant nothing to me. And so this is just something that people have to get past on that mental side of it, where they feel like they have to do that habitual, thing. You can get beyond that. And so I don't totally get it. It felt so weird to actually have something in my hand like that all the time. I can't even imagine doing it again. And I can't be around it, really.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Can't
So
stand it.
where does this fall in on? Well, on the Delta 8 side, are they vaping that as well in oil form, or is the Delta 8 only? Well, yeah, because it comes in the CBD oil,
I mean,
right?
I don't even know
Yes.
anything about Delta 8. So
Okay. Well, why don't you talk to us, Dr. Henry? What is Delta 8 for those that don't know what Delta 8
I didn't know if you were
is?
ready to segue into that or not.
No, that's perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
Sure. It's been a super interesting study. And in fact, so I was going to do the vaping study again and just get a bigger sample. And my students all told me, because students are often how I learn things these days. Students tell me, look, nobody has a dealer that goes to Colorado anymore. They just buy Delta 8. I'm like, what? What's Delta 8? So yeah, you're where I was just 2 months ago. So don't feel bad. So Delta 8 is it's a chemical compound called a cannabinoid. So it's a little complicated, but both cannabis and hemp plants have more than 100 different chemical compounds in them called cannabinoids. In the cannabis plant, more of them are psychoactive, meaning they affect your mind or your behavior, right? You'll get high. So a really well-known cannabinoid is CBD, what you can get at a regular CBD store. It's called cannabidiol. And almost all the CBD comes from hemp, so not psychoactive, right? That's from the hemp plant. But maybe the most well-known, maybe outside of CBD, the most well-known cannabinoid is Delta 9, which it's called that because in the molecular structure, there's a double bond between the carbons, between the 9th and the 10th carbons. And that's what gets you high. That's THC, right?
Okay.
It's the THC that gets you high. So that's Delta 9. Now, Delta 9 has this close cousin called an isomer, same chemical formula, same structure. The difference is that double bond, it's moved over. Instead of between the 9th and the 10th carbons, it's between the 8th and the 9th. And that little change affects the psychoactive properties of it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So you do find Delta 8 in nature, but in very, very small quantities. So in 2019, they discovered that if you take CBD from a hemp plant and you take it into a laboratory, you can dissolve it in an acetone and wash it repeatedly in acid and then dry it. Well, it creates Delta 8. So you can bend that CBD molecule into a Delta 8 molecule, which gives you a sort of high, not the same as Delta 9. But anyway, that Delta 8 can be added to gummies. It can be added to cookies, candy. I saw breakfast cereal. It can be vaped, as you guys pointed out. Or you can even, it's a liquid that can be painted onto a hemp plant, and then you can smoke the hemp plant. So normally you wouldn't smoke a hemp plant because you wouldn't get high.
Okay.
But if you dip it or paint it with Delta 8, then you do get a high from it, right?
Okay.
So it's still illegal, right? You can't just go buy it.
Well, that's actually a great question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Because I really don't know anything about it.
Well,
I
my
just-
understanding, okay, so and I know I have that is one of my questions that I'm going to ask here in a little bit. But the thing of it is I found out about Delta 8, I guess at the end of last year is when I first heard about it. And it was because a school resource officer asked me, what do you know about Delta 8? Because he said, we confiscated a vape pen, and that's what they said, that it was Delta 8 and that it was legal. You could buy it in a store. And
So it is legal.
so, well, up
Hang
until
on to that.
yeah, hang on to that thought
Okay.
because just a week ago, what was it? DSHS came out and has now classified Delta 8 as a
Mhm.
Schedule 1 controlled substance. And my understanding is because it's synthetic. Is that your understanding as well? Is because that's why they're scheduling it as a Schedule 1, is because the DEA said it's a synthetic drug.
It's it there are many reasons.
Okay.
So it is federally legal under the 2018 Farm Bill.
Okay.
So there was a 2018 Farm Bill at the federal level that made farming and distributing hemp and hemp extracts legal, as long as the Delta 9 concentration was below 0.3%.
0.3%. Okay.
So that was the Delta 9 concentration. So as long as there was less than 0.3%, they figured you wouldn't get high from it, therefore it could be legal, right?
Okay.
So the federal government, though, did give states the ability to regulate hemp products, and about 18 states have banned Delta 8 directly. But then, yeah, about a week ago, Texas, the Department of State Health Services issued a statement that they considered Delta 8 to be illegal, saying that Delta 8 is a form of THC, and even isomers of THC are illegal, and therefore, in fact, Delta 8 has been illegal for 40 years, according to dishes.
Wow.
Okay.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, but this difference of opinion, it happened so quickly. It really caught shop owners and the
I was gonna
industry.
say, I bet there's
Mhm.
a lot of money in situations right now with people not very happy
Well,
about
yeah,
that.
the CBD stores, I mean, they
Yeah.
carry a lot of the Delta 8 from
Well,
what I
and if the
understood.
kids were no longer needing Colorado and they were all going, I mean, can you imagine
Just go to your station down the street and be able
Mm.
to purchase it.
Well, I'd be really interested to hear about shops in Cleburne. But here in Denton, only about half of the shops have said that they're going to even take it off the shelves.
Really?
Most shops are still selling, in fact, slightly more than half that I've been able to check on.
Wow.
Yeah, figuring, I mean, there is a lawsuit against the state. And actually let's see, I think it's going to be November 5th. It's coming up in a few days. They're going to actually review it.
Okay.
But yeah, there immediately a lawsuit came up sponsored by the hemp industry, saying that this was an opinion that was arbitrary and unfair and was affecting their business, which
Mm.
had, you could see that happening.
I mean, I kind of get why it's now illegal, but what was the main reason that just came about? Like, where did they decide, okay, we're going to make this illegal now?
Well, they've been looking the other way, frankly, and
Okay.
then the FDA has been watching Delta 8, trying to understand, are people having adverse reactions? What are the effects of this? And
Mhm.
so everybody kept thinking that Texas was just going to keep looking the other way, and that this was Texas's way of saying, look, we don't want to have a Delta 9, a THC,
Mhm.
we don't want to have a legal pot industry. We're going to just let this Delta 8 thing play out. And so honestly, it took lots of people, caught lots of people off guard when they suddenly said, whoa, in fact, it's always been illegal.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I read, so I made a note, and I read this last night that DSHS, they can actually take enforcement action against licensees who sell consumable hemp products containing this controlled substance. So I guess they could actually pull their license to be able to sell um, if they are selling it. So I guess it's to be determined, I guess, at this point, what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I guess we'll know more after November 5th.
Well, I tell you what, let's hold this thought because we're fixing to go to our first commercial break, and we'll come back and talk more about Delta 8 with Dr. Henry.
Thanks so much.
Mhm.
Hey, Jill, congratulations on your son getting into the college of his dreams and with a full scholarship, too. Yes, we are so proud of him. You know, I have to be honest. I'm a bit worried about our daughter getting into college. It's so competitive out there, and I feel overwhelmed with where to start. I completely understand. Listen, I felt the same way, and then I met Dr. Gina of Education Prep Centers. She put a plan in place that helped our son stand out in the admissions process and that gave us a peace of mind for how to create a financial roadmap for his future. Wow, that's great. Sounds like I need to give her a call. Yes, she definitely helped our son find the perfect college, meet all his deadlines, and help us feel less anxious about the whole process. You need to reach out to her. Just check out educationprepcenters.com and set up a complimentary assessment with Dr. Gina. You'll be so glad you did. Education Prep Centers, college admissions made easy.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379, or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
You're listening to JoCo Community Radio.
Welcome back to the second half of Reach Across Johnson County here on JoCo Community Radio. JoCo Community Radio is the voice of Johnson County, Texas. We are live 365 on the TuneIn Radio Network. Oh, is that okay?
Mhm.
Oh, I don't know. I heard something. I heard something else in my ear, and I thought it was. I'm so sorry. Let me put my brain cells back into that, please. We are live 365 on the TuneIn Radio Network. To listen, simply go to TuneIn JoCo, that's JOCO, and download the free app. All of our shows can also be found on any one of your favorite podcast platforms, such as Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, and Spreaker. Check out our lineup on JoCoCommunityRadio.com. Thanks for tuning in. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. That's right. Hail happens, storm happens. You got to have someone who can help advocate for you with your insurance company to get them to pay the full amount of your claim, which 10 times out of 10 they don't want to do.
Never.
So get them in your corner before the next storm hits. Go to facebook.com/next level claims, and someone will be in touch with you to help you navigate that challenging situation,
Yes,
is
it
the
can
way
be
we'll
very
put it.
challenging.
If you're just joining us, we'd give you a little background as to what Reach Across Johnson County is. Reach's mission is to support safe and healthy choices vital to the well-being of our youth, families, and community. This show will guide you, educate you, and inspire you to be a part of a solution and to reach out and help make a difference in our communities. What began as a local movement in the city of Midlothian grew to include programs throughout Ellis County within only a few years and eventually expanded to neighboring Johnson County, Texas. So thanks for joining us. We're back with Shari and Nikki and our amazing guest, Dr. Doug Henry,
Yes.
medical anthropologist and professor of anthropology at UNT. Did I get that right?
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. Yay.
I have to look at the paper to do that. I don't know how I did that.
UNT alma mater.
Oh,
And
is
so
it
is
really?
it Cassie's too.
Oh, I didn't know
One of our
that.
directors.
Oh.
Did what? I'm sorry. One of your directors did.
One of our directors and I both graduated from UNT.
Oh, Excellent.
Yeah.
Anthropology major? No.
No.
We missed one. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
can I just for people who don't know what medical anthropology is, can you give
Yeah.
everyone who's listening just a little bit of a background as to what exactly medical anthropology is? What is the science and the field behind
It
it?
sounds really cool.
I know it does.
Oh, thanks. Sometimes, I guess. Sometimes not. I mean, basically, we study health beliefs and health behaviors, right? And then, in particular, paying attention to sort of the social and cultural and political forces and economic forces that really shape people's behaviors and shape people's beliefs and sort of limit their choices as far as what they can do in life and what they can't do in life. Um, and so inside of that, so that is anthropology in general. And then what I do in particular is medical anthropology, which just means I'm really interested in health beliefs and health behavior. So yeah, that is it.
Health behavior. So health behavior in individuals alone, or do you look at it from a societal
And in groups,
aspect as
yeah,
well?
absolutely. So, for instance, I've done projects on vaping and now Delta 8. But before that, I've done projects on sleep and sleep disorders. So this was an interesting project for me looking at, everybody has occasionally trouble sleeping. And so there was a Dallas-based physician and I who did several projects on basically asking, when does trouble sleeping become something you would go to a doctor for? Um, and so, yeah, looking at how do people treat their own sleep disorders, particularly insomnia, because
We might
everybody
need
occasionally
this
has a
back
bad
on the show as another topic.
It's
That
another
was,
topic.
I mean, for real.
Well, I mean, it honestly kind of crosses over each other. There's that crossroads because a lot of people who do have insomnia or sleep disorders will self-medicate in order to
Yes.
go to sleep. So whether that's marijuana,
Melatonin,
melatonin,
wine.
wine.
Absolutely.
No, not wine. Wine does not help you sleep. It makes you really hot and then you can't sleep. I know this to be fact. That I don't sleep well if I drink too much red wine. But some people will try and self-medicate with alcohol in general. But usually marijuana is that, and then the CBD. And I mean, there's lots. I've had conversations with a CBD shop owner here in Burleson who's been on the radio with us, who's very, very, very knowledgeable in all of the different types of CBD. And we actually having a conversation about the Delta 8, the hemp, and I'm not sure if we got into the Delta 9. We may have earlier in the year.
Okay.
And I was very interested because I was like, I knew nothing about this stuff until he talked about it. And so, but understanding it is important. I mean, even if you're that first time you walk into a CBD shop, I think did we ask this question when we were on commercial break or when we were on air, if there's a legal age, if you have to be a certain age to go into a CBD shop, or can any
kids-
child
yeah,
go
can
into a
kids buy
CBD?
CBD?
And I don't know if that the answer to that question. Do you know the answer to that question, doctor?
Yeah, and it depends on the CBD shop. The state doesn't set laws about hemp derivatives in terms of how old you have to be. Now, if your CBD comes from a vape shop, then a vape shop they're typically very strict about having a 21 and older. And there
So-
are also convenience stores like Quick Trip has also a 21 and older policy, but
Okay.
others do not. So it is really up to the establishment.
Interesting.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
I find it even more interesting that the types of shops that aren't specializing in CBD have the restrictions on like the age restrictions, but the CBD shops who are selling strictly CBD don't have the restrictions. I don't know which one's better. I mean, I see an overall problem in Texas, and we were talking about this on the commercial break, that even as Texas was looking to legalize marijuana possibly in the future, that they were going to allow the growers to regulate themselves and not an independent lab. And so I don't know if that's still if they're still arguing, which way they're going to go. But I think it's very silly for any type of grower, whether it's strictly hemp or if it's marijuana, I don't know
self-regulate.
how you
Yeah.
regulate yourself. It's the
Yeah.
silliest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. California, Arizona, and Colorado all have independent labs where the grower sends their marijuana to, and it's tested, and it has to test a certain way in order for it to then
able
be
to be
sold.
sold. Mhm.
Yeah.
And so to think of it, anything being unregulated
Ugh.
is crazy. What have you ran into in your studies
The
and
same, yeah. So we often ask people about what kind of regulation would you like? Would you be amenable to? How old do you think you should have to be? What about concentrations? And honestly, most of the people that we talk with, so the users of Delta 8, have all said, yeah, frankly, we think it should be a regulated market. We think it should be 21 and older. Then in the next breath, they will tell you that, look, kids will always figure out a way to get it, just like kids have always figured out a way to get other stuff. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't make it difficult.
Right.
So in
right?
fact, what scares me the most is the unregulated market of Texas, because that's where we're at right now. There is just no requirement that companies test their products.
And that's
Many
what
do,
Yeah, we're
but there's
saying.
not a requirement that they do.
Yeah, we were just talking about that during the commercial break because I remember seeing, I want to say it was on Channel 8, they have their little deal that they do where they, I forget now what it's called, but anyhow, it's where they somebody asks a question and then they go and try to find the answer. And that was one of the things about a lot of people think that it is regulated, and that's where the problem is because they said that they went into the different stores that were selling even the CBD, and they're supposed to be, I believe, the same thing, that 0.3%. Uh, they weren't supposed to be over that on the THC. And in fact, when the studies were done, they were saying when they sent it off to the labs were coming back and they were saying they're way over the 0.3. And so, and I think a lot of times that catches a lot of people off guard because, if they have to be drug tested for work or something like that, I know a lot of people use the CBDs, and, but they don't realize that they're not regulated. And if you have to pass the drug test, you're going to probably pop positive for THC, in using these products. And so people need to be aware. But it's not only just CBDs. We did a deal, even the some vitamins and things, supplements. Supplements aren't necessarily regulated, and I think in kids' mind, and I know even in some adults, they think because it's sold in a store that it's supposed to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always the case. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if you take a lack of technical expertise, in this case, this all has to be done in a fairly sophisticated lab, or should be done in a fairly sophisticated lab. And then you put on top of that this sort of proliferation of shady actors and kind of this gold rush mentality of, look, there's money to be made in Texas.
Yes.
And then, no FDA guidance, and then a very trusting consumer base. I mean, we're largely talking about kids in their 20s here.
Yeah.
The risks to public health become huge. And, I myself, I don't have a problem with Delta 8, the product itself. For me, it's really the supply chain, right? It's the safe supply of Delta 8.
Right.
And just what Nikki, I think, said, which is that, look, in other places, Colorado, California, I mean, it's tested, it is a very tested and relatively safe product, but we don't have that here in Texas.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting for being such a conservative state. You would think it would be
You
extremely
don't tell Texas how to do things.
opposite. Yeah, I mean, I get that. But, and again, here lies in looking at the numbers of what's happening with our children.
Right.
So, I mean, they don't want to be, don't mess with Texas. Don't tell us what to do.
Mhm.
We're on our own. We should be able to do whatever we want. And yet it's just, we're hurting ourselves.
Well, yeah, because when you go back and you look at the overall cost that it cost us, I mean, because somebody's going to have to be treated for the thing, the results of using these products and things like that. And our kids, their brains are still developing until they're in their mid-20s. And so we're looking at a society that's going to have
Oh my
some
gosh.
issues later on because, we do have these things available that they have access to. And as the doctor mentioned, kids are going to find a way to do it, but as parents and concerned citizens, we need to put things in place that protect them as much as we possibly can. But again, Texas sometimes has difficulty with that. It seems like we're more reactive than proactive.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes I have issue with that.
Well, I mean, even on the local level, we see that too.
Yes.
That it's more of a reactive than a proactive. Like, let's get out and talk about this stuff before and start educating kids. What's the difference between these things? And we've talked about that with vaping. You don't
Yes.
know what you're really
What you're getting your
getting
hands on. Yeah.
in a vape and what you're truly inhaling.
Last week I was telling the kids in Red Ribbon Week, guys, we know that our grandparents and our elderly, they've developed cancer from smoking cigarettes. We know that. We see the lung cancer. We also see that y'all's lungs are getting, popcorn lungs and that kind of thing from smoking the vapes, but we don't know what else that's doing to you.
Yeah, later
I mean,
on.
really, we don't know the deformities or the things that could be happening.
Right.
And I hope that just scared the crap out of them.
Do we?
Hey,
sometimes it's. I mean, look. I mean, when my mom caught me smoking cigarettes years and years ago, and of course this was a pack a day smoker, so it was just even more ridiculous. The hypocrisy of my
your
mother.
mom was a
Oh yes, I mean I grew up in a household in the 70s and the 80s, and I'm one of 7 kids. We all smoked at one point. Okay, so imagine that, and both parents smoked. Dad didn't smoke as much, but mom was a big smoker. But when she catches me, and I was just really dabbling, at this point, and I get it. So she takes a cardboard box, cuts a hole in it, sticks my head in it, and she goes, "Okay, here you go. Smoke this entire pack of cigarettes." And then she had a fan blowing like towards the box, and I'm just going, Are you insane? This is not the way to deter someone for smoking. I already.
Oh my
Hey, guess
gosh,
what?
That just gave me a major stomach
Let's just go through the whole idea that back in the this was in the 80s, because I think I was 15. Okay. I was 15, 14, 15, somewhere around there. And all I'm thinking is, Mom, you do this in the car all the time.
Yeah,
We don't need a
right, yeah.
cardboard box. You smoke with the windows rolled up,
Oh, yes.
So I've
been living in one, Mom.
yeah. And I smoked for 15 years, and but then I quit. So I've been smoke free for almost 22 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine it. Although I did almost imagine it last week. I was like, God, right now I could just smoke a cigarette. But I knew that if I did it, I would feel like absolute
crap after.
Yeah. I would just feel horrible. But for a moment, I actually thought about it. It was the first time I actually thought about it in 22 years.
Whenever I was at UNT, like I think I might have tried one, like I said, from an ashtray in high school. Like my friends were like, "Ooh, let's go out here." But in college, all my sorority sisters, and I didn't. Like I don't even think I tried like my official or bought a pack of cigarettes till I was like 22, 23.
Oh wow.
But at UNT, it's probably was like that at all the colleges, but it was just wild to me that it was just the norm. And I guess that's just what it is right now with the vapes.
I think the scary part about that, and I'm comparing, I've got an 18-year-old who's smoking cigarettes right now. And I have a 16-year-old who's kicking the vape habit. And, although he gave it all up, he dabbled back in, and I took another one from him, and I took it from him instead of him giving it up himself. Cause I said, you're going against what you're really wanting to do here. And so when I look at the two of them, I don't like either option.
Yeah.
I would prefer him smoke a cigarette. I mean, if you're going to do one or the other, it's not, just like you said, doctor, there was this idea of, well, I'm going to vape in order to quit smoking. Well, it's doing the complete opposite, but you're getting a massive amount of nicotine
Yeah.
in every drag that you take off of it. So you're getting this a rush and a concentrated amount of it's a pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine in each
pod,
cartridge.
yeah.
And to explain that to a kid
How fast do they go through those?
I don't know because I never I
So like
haven't
if some kids they smoke
It
a pack a
depends.
day.
He
It
might-
depends.
doctor may
Okay.
know.
It all depends.
What are you seeing?
With vape juice, I mean, you can go through a vape cartridge, a cart a day, but other people make it. Sometimes with vaping, people are a little bit more social about it, and so will only vape at parties, or will only vape when they drink a beer or something. And so, sometimes once a week, sometimes it'll last once a month, just depending on how often they do it.
What is the price on a vape versus Delta 8?
Well,
You know that?
Delta 8, I'm sorry, I don't. Delta 8 is more expensive. It is less expensive than Delta 9. But I think you mean a vape cartridge,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I
Because
meant.
there's so many different ways to take Delta 8.
Oh, okay.
Gummies, cookies, candies, Lucky Charms cereal, that kind of stuff, right?
And they can go in a store and buy all those things?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that is right. Yeah. And in fact, so, I mean,
And that's marketed to kids.
oh, it totally is. I mean,
Lucky Charms, right?
I mean, in college students too, for real.
This might be a question that's more on the sociology side than the anthropology side, but talking from a societal point of view is again, if they're wanting to get high off the Delta 8 and that's what they're looking for, it doesn't seem as though we're just still not addressing the bottom line issue, which is mental health.
Right.
So that's the difference between vaping because you have a nicotine addiction or you're trying and then you get addicted faster by vaping or smoking a cigarette. But when you're looking at the Delta 8 side of it and you're getting a high, again, we're looking at a different issue. I mean, how do you look at that? Can you compare that from an anthropological, did I say that right?
Yeah, sure.
And a sociological perspective, can you compare those two in any way? Or do they
Yeah, absolutely.
cross
Yeah. I
over?
mean, so that's one of the questions we ask is, what do you get out of Delta 8, right? And again, there are just so many different reasons. A lot of them are split between taking Delta 8 for medical kinds of reasons, for similar reasons that we saw in the vape study. There are also people who just do it recreationally, right? They actually will prefer the way Delta 8 makes them feel to regular THC or Delta 9, because it is a different kind of high. Sometimes people will call Delta 8 weed light or even diet weed in our study, because it doesn't give you nearly the intense high or the brain fog that THC or that pot does. They'll say things like, well, I'm more mellow, but my head doesn't feel as foggy, or I had so much paranoia and anxiety with Delta 9 and I don't have that anymore. People will talk about a body high versus a head high that they get with Delta 8.
Explain the body high.
Oh, it's more relaxing across their whole bodies as opposed to just sort of numbing their brain.
Okay.
That's what they meant.
So is Delta 8 then more typically used for people who might have fibromyalgia, that
Well,
type of overall body pain?
It is. So one of our participants was a 19-year-old woman who had an autoimmune disorder. And so she'd been taking hydrocodone for nerve and muscle pain. And so she describes Delta 8, she described it as, it's like taking a backpack off. Like I've got this heavy weight on me all the time. And so then I take some Delta 8 and it's like just immediately lifting it off, right?
Say clear, I don't want to say clearly. So I'm just going to ask the question. Delta 8 safer than obviously taking hydrocodone or any type of pain management.
Well, less
pill.
addiction, I will say that, less addiction, but the safer, really, again, it's all that safe supply stuff that we were talking about, right? Like you assume that it's made in a nice quality lab, but you don't know that. And I can even narrate a personal history if I have a minute. So
Yes,
I
please.
was interested in the, so you can buy Delta 8 online. You can buy it just about anywhere, it seems like these days. And so they all come with what's called a certificate of analysis. So a little QR code that you scan with your phone, and it'll take you straight to a website that supposedly it gives you a sort of like a chemistry lab report. So supposedly if one lab has made it, then they've had it third party tested somewhere else to sort of ensure that it's safe, right? And ensure that it's legal. So you can get an analysis report of all the stuff that's in it. So I'm interested in this kind of stuff. So I'm scanning this QR code and looking it up. And so, okay, I see it's tested. It says it was tested by a laboratory that was out of Colorado. And so I look up that laboratory and I research it. Well, I find out that it's not an approved cannabis testing lab in Colorado. So, okay, they gave me this nice report that tells me it's actually pretty technical. It's a mass spectrometry, gas chromatography kind of graph. And so I can read that because I took organic chemistry.
Say, but most people wouldn't. I mean,
right. But the whole point, like, they're not an approved lab that's generating this nice looking report. They're not a approved cannabis testing lab as recognized by the state of Colorado. And so what does that mean? I asked myself, like, okay, does that mean it's, there's some reason why this particular lab isn't an approved cannabis testing laboratory? They're not a certified testing laboratory?
Yeah.
Or
is this just like three guys with a high school chemistry set?
That have a really good looking certificate that unless an anthropologist was looking at it, no one's going to know.
And I mean, that's what's so interesting about this to me is that, like, there's no answer to that, right? Do I trust this lab that nobody's ever heard of or that, isn't a certified lab? Do I just go with that? And it's really up to me, right? It's up to the user whether to take those risks or not.
And we know probably what most of the choices are on that.
So I do have somebody asking, what is the doctor's opinion on marijuana vape to help sleep?
There are people who do it to help them sleep. That's my opinion. There have been good studies. Frankly, there have been good studies out there that have looked at both CBD and THC and have shown correlation between ingesting it or taking it and sleeping and improved sleep. So there are some studies out there that show that. There are other studies that say it's inconclusive. If you talk to people, which is what I do, they will tell you, yeah, it seems to help me.
But overall, we agree that vaping is the worst way to ingest it.
So vaping seems to have more risks associated with it. I think we're talking about Delta 8 or THC,
right?
Because there have been secondary tests of the products that have shown that Delta 8 has heavy metals in it and sometimes residual chemicals. Remember, it's always made in a laboratory, that there can be residual chemicals left in it. And for some of those, like copper, we actually don't know what the safe limit is to inhale copper. So sometimes it will reveal chemicals in it or residual chemicals in it that we just don't even know what's safe to vape, right? What's safe to inhale into your lungs.
Inhaling copper doesn't sound good to me in any levels. Well, doctor, we're at the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you'll join us again.
Absolutely.
With
any
amazing information.
Yeah, I love all of this.
I know, it was good. Thank you so very much.
We'll see you back here next week, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, JoCo Community Radio.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters. It's a clean sweep for the Republican Party in this year's election for Virginia's top jobs. Republican Jason Mayares has now defeated incumbent